Hello, welcome to Task Analysis. I'm Caroline McAllister, and I'm a preschool PBIS coach and early childhood behavior specialist with the Ashland RTC. I'm going to be presenting information to you today on task analysis. But before we get started, I would like for everyone to complete a pretest based on the knowledge that you already have about the subject before receiving the training. There's only 3 questions on the pretest. This pretest will also be your sign-in for the training, and you will be given a post-test at the end of the training with the same questions, which will act as your sign-out for the training. Both of these need to be completed and submitted to receive a certificate. So this is the QR code for your pretest. So just put your camera on your cell phone or device over the QR code on the screen and click the box at the top of the phone screen, and that's going to take you to your pretest form. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to complete that, and then we will get started. Okay, after you have answered the 3 questions, don't forget to click Submit at the bottom. So these are the questions about task analysis that I plan to answer for you today. I also hope to provide you with some examples and illustrations of using these as well. We'll talk about what is task analysis, with whom and when it's used, why using task analysis is effective, um, how do I create a task analysis, and how do I teach a task analysis. So to begin with, what is task analysis? It's an evidence-based practice, and based on the definition provided by the National Professional Development Center of Autism Spectrum Disorders, it defines it as a teaching process that breaks down complex activities into a series of simple steps that students are able to learn more easily. So it takes a more complex task, breaks it down into simple steps so that you can teach students one task at a time. Task analysis is often used as part of applied behavior analysis, and that is an approach which is often used with those with autism spectrum disorder. With whom and when is it used? It's been found to be effective with preschool, elementary, and middle school, as well as high school students. It's effective with students with and without disabilities. It is especially effective with those with autism spectrum disorder, regardless of their cognitive level or their expressive communication abilities. So that is not a prerequisite for using this. It is also beneficial when used to train professionals on how to interact and teach students, especially those with autism spectrum disorder. So it is also used with adults and professionals. It's used in a variety of settings, home, school, community. In fact, generalization of skills is most likely when you do teach the task analysis in multiple settings. So the multiple settings is actually encouraged. It can be used to teach a variety of tasks. It can be used with academic, behavior, communication, as well as social issues. It's often used with self-help and adaptive skills as well. So any skill that can be broken down into smaller steps for teaching is going to be an appropriate target for task analysis. So why use task analysis? One reason is that it's a systematic instruction. It's very clear with precise steps. Another reason is the consistency. The steps, once you determine the steps of a task analysis to be taught, you teach them in a very consistent, systematic way. Consistency is going to be important because no matter who is teaching the student, it's taught in the same way. And I'm going to show you a video here that touches on the importance of consistency. And you may get a little chuckle from this.
Do you know that we don't catch that fishing boat? There ain't gonna be no deep sea fishing. We'll have to stay on the dock with the old people here. Hold it, hold it, hold it. What are you doing here? What? What about the other foot? There ain't no sock on it. I'll get to it. Don't you know that the whole world puts on a sock and a sock and a shoe and a shoe? I like to take care of 1 foot at a time. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. It's just as quick my way. Wait a minute, that ain't the point. You see what I don't keep doing it. Listen to me. Suppose there's a fire in the house and you got to run for your life. Your way, all you got on is one shoe and a sock. My way, you got on a sock and a sock. You see, you're even. Suppose it's raining or snowing outside. Your way, with a sock on each foot, my feet would get wet. My way, with a sock and a shoe on 1 foot, I could hop around and stay dry. I think you've been hopping around on your head. Wait a minute, listen to me. Supposing the other sock's got a hole in it. It doesn't have a hole in it. I said supposing it's got a hole. It has a hole. All right, it's got a hole in it. So, you ain't got another matching pair, so what do you gotta do? Your way, you gotta take off a whole shoe and a sock. My way, all you gotta do is take off one sock. All right, if it'll make you happy, I'll start all over again. No, you're halfway through. Now, gee, get on with it. We're in a hurry. You can start doing it the right way tomorrow morning. And do it that way for the rest of your life.
So you can see based on that video that consistency can be very important. There are often different ways to break a task down, but once you break it down, you want to teach it in the same way each time. Another reason to use task analysis is that you can individualize it for students. That is very easy to do when you're breaking down the task. And also, it's a comprehensive approach. So You break down the task in a comprehensive manner, making sure that each step is included, and it's a comprehensive way to teach a student. How do I create a task analysis? Step one is that you need to determine what the target behavior is going to be. So the target behavior needs to consist of a series of chain discrete steps. A single discrete skill would not be appropriate for teaching through a task analysis. And also a task with multiple variables or outcomes is not appropriate because that would be too much to teach through a task analysis. So an appropriate example would be turn on the kitchen faucet. That is a discrete skill which would be too simple to teach. A more appropriate skill for task analysis would be washing dishes. Preparing, serving, and cleaning up dinner is going to have too many variables and be too complex with too many outcomes. So you need to make sure that you are choosing an appropriate skill for task analysis, not one that is a simple discrete skill as in turning on the faucet, and not one that has too many variables in it, such as preparing, serving, and cleaning up dinner. So the appropriate target there would be washing dishes. That would be an appropriate target behavior for task analysis. So let's practice some of these. There's a list of 6 tasks there. Some of them are going to be too simple for task analysis. Some are going to be too complex, and some are going to be appropriate target behaviors or skills. So take a few minutes to look through each of those and decide if that is going to be an appropriate target for task analysis. Take a few minutes and then we will go over these together. So let's go over each of these together. The first one, washing a load of clothes. So is that something that can be broken down into smaller steps to be taught to a student? Yes, so that would be an appropriate skill or behavior for task analysis. The next one, washing and drying your hair. So anytime that you see the and there, washing and drying, you know that that skill is going to be too complex to be broken down. So that would be a no. That is not appropriate target behavior skill for task analysis. The next one, sweeping and mopping the floor. Again, you see the and, that is two distinct tasks, sweeping, mopping. So that's going to be too complex. So that's going to be a no. The next one is opening a drawer. So this is one that's going to be a no as well because it's too simple to be broken down into smaller steps. Getting ready for school. That one can be broken down into smaller steps as part of a task analysis. So yeah, that would be a yes. It is an appropriate target behavior or skill. And the last one, hanging a shirt in the closet. That is going to be too simple. So that again is going to be a no, because that would only be, for example, one step of putting clothes away, which would be an appropriate target or skill to be broken down. The next thing we need to do is we need to identify prerequisite skills and materials needed. So we need to make sure that the learner has the required prerequisite skills needed in order to be able to learn the task that we've selected as a target. So for example, if you were going to teach a child to read, for example, you would not to at least make sure they were able to recognize individual letters and their sounds. Another example would be teaching a child to tell time. You can't do that until they recognize their numbers. Teaching child to count money, they must at least be able to count by fives or tens. So you need to make sure that they have those prerequisite skills. And also we need to define the necessary materials that we need to teach the task. So the materials needed might be the actual objects that we're going to use. They may be visual supports. They may be a video for modeling that task, but we need to define and collect those as well. Often collecting data on the performance of the targeted skill can give you the information about what materials are needed and also what prerequisite skills are going to be needed for the student to be able to perform them. The next step is breaking the skill down into components. You're going to break it down into smaller steps so that the learner can successfully demonstrate the skill by following those steps. There are several ways that you can use to break the skill into components that things like completing the skill yourself and recording each step as you do it. Another way to break the skill into components is to observe another person, either in real time or via a video completing the task and record each step. Or you can brainstorm with others, even students, to determine the steps that are involved in a task. So this is an example of a task analysis on brushing teeth. And you can read there the steps involved. So first they have to pick up their toothbrush, then they have to pick up the toothpaste, they have to open the lid of the paste, squeeze out some paste on the brush head. So you can see that each step of brushing your teeth has been listed out for the student. Each step is very simple and each step is very discreet and clear. And again, this is going to be able to be taught in a very consistent manner when it is all listed and broken down in this way. So let's practice. I want you to think about teaching a preschool student to use an art easel. And I want you to think about all of the steps of using the easel and break those down into each component as you would teach a preschool student. So I'm going to give you several minutes to think about those and jot down each step on a piece of paper, and then we will review possible steps involved. So when we think about breaking down all of the steps of using the easel, a few that you may not have all of these, you may have more of these, but some of those would be putting on the smock, getting a piece of paper, attaching the paper to the easel, gathering paint and brush to use, painting the picture, moving the picture to a drying area, cleaning up the paint and brush, um, taking off the smock, hanging the smock up, washing your hands. So those are just some. Yours may be a little different than that. When you're breaking them down, you also want to consider how many discrete steps the student is going to need based on their cognitive level and their level of experience. So again, those are not always going to be exactly the same, as long as when you're teaching the student that you're teaching each step in a consistent manner. Step 4 is you need to confirm that the task is completely analyzed. So you make sure that your steps are accurate and that they're complete. Each step needs to represent a discrete behavior. The steps need to be manageable for the learner, and the steps are described accurately for the learner's needs. And then next, you're going to determine how the skill is going to be taught. You're going to present the steps of the task analysis to the learner in an age and developmentally appropriate manner. Some of those things are going to, how you teach it are going to be based on the learner's temperament, their learning style, a history of what has or hasn't worked with them in the past for this learner, their IEP goals and objectives, and the environments within which the learner is functioning. So 3 different ways to teach task analysis. You can do forward chaining, and that is where you learn from the start of the task sequence through each step of the sequence. So step 2 doesn't begin until step 1 is complete. So each step is first modeled by the teacher and then imitated by the student. Although you may have to use hand over hand prompting, following by fading of the prompt as the student starts to show mastery of the step. So with forward chaining, you're teaching step 1, then you're teaching step 2, and then you're pairing step 1, step 2, and then moving on to step 3 in that manner. Backward chaining is just the opposite. You're teaching the student the last step of the task, first by having them observe the teacher, and then by having the student assist the teacher. After they have grasped that last step, the teacher turns to the second to the last step of the process and continues backwards to the initial steps. And then total task presentation would be teaching the entire task, including each individual step, while prompting and reinforcing each step until the entire chain is mastered. So you're teaching each step along the way, all at the same time before each step. Each step doesn't have to be mastered before moving on to the next step, in other words. Another important thing in teaching a task analysis is using visuals. So you're going to want to add a visual when teaching the task because this is going to increase effectiveness and it's going to lead to their independence at a quicker rate. This is also going to allow the student a quick reference that doesn't require an adult, and it's going to give them greater confidence when they are trying to master the task. The next thing is that we need to remember to monitor our progress. So along the way, we are collecting data on the target skills and behavior, and we need to be sure to include the level of support that's needed for each of the steps that's identified for the task analysis. So I'm going to show you an example here of where under steps, you would list each of the discrete behaviors that you've identified for your targeted behavior. So under steps is each step in your task analysis. And then each time that you teach that step, you are indicating whether the student required a physical, verbal, gestural prompt or whether they were independent with that step. And so this is going to help you determine whether to move on to the next step if you are doing forward or backward chaining. So this data is going to help drive your decision on how, whether the student has mastered that step and whether or not to move on to the next step. So what if you are collecting your data and progress isn't noted? These are some questions that you need to ask yourself about your task analysis. You want to make sure that your targeted skill or behavior is well defined. You also want to make sure that the target skill or behavior is measurable and observable. And make sure you're asking yourself, does the learner have those prerequisite skills needed to learn the skill or behavior? Was the task completely analyzed? Are you missing a step in there? That's creating confusion for the student. And have you selected the appropriate teaching method to teach the steps of the task analysis? So maybe that progress isn't being made because you used forward chaining, and maybe it's going to be more beneficial to just teach the entire task at once. And was the learner prompted to perform the individual steps? So if they weren't able to perform the first step, were you providing the level of prompting they needed to perform it, whether that would be physical, verbal, or gestural prompts? If you've addressed each of the issues and the student continues not to show progress, you want to consider selecting a different evidence-based practice to use with the student. If you have looked at all of these issues and you're continuing to not make progress. And now we've come to the post-test. So if you'll take a minute to scan this on your phone, go to your camera on your phone and focus your camera on the QR code and open your box, and it's going to take you to the post-test form. Again, you're going to have the three same questions you had in the pre-test form, except now you should be able to answer those correctly, given the information that we just reviewed on task analysis. There's also a space there at the very end for any comments or suggestions that you would like to make about the training. And so I'm going to leave this up here for several minutes so that you can complete this in order to receive your certificate. And thank you for joining me today for task analysis. And feel free to reach me with any questions that you may have. At my email, it's carolee.mcallister@ashland.kyschools.us. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.